With Rosetta came yet another fable, Will of Arcana. And when I saw this, I thought to myself, hey, this actually looks pretty darn good. See, Fable Rarity cards are unique collector's pieces that embody a major theme of each set, and thus desirable to open. But not all of them have been desirable to play. In Will of Arcana, I wondered if it wasn't one of the best ones we've actually seen in a while. So I turned to you, the community, for the answer. And today we go over your results, ranking the most playable fables in all of Flesh and Blood. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today, as we're going over, that's right, your results, ranking the most playable fables in all of Flesh and Blood. Now, the data that we are using for today's ranking actually comes from a survey that I put up. I asked you, the Dice Commando community, to rank the existing fables from most playable to least playable, and 73 of you actually responded to the survey in the time that it was there. Now, to explain today's results, what I wanted to do was just walk you through very briefly how the community score, as I'm calling it, was calculated. So to come up with the community score, we took the average of 100 divided by the rank. Now, what do I mean by that exactly? Well, if we go over and we look at a kind of example scoring, it doesn't go all the way down, but first place, if you were to go in and rank it at first, it would be worth 100 points. Your second place ranking would be worth 50. Again, that's 100 divided by its rank 2. Third, 33, and so on and so on and so on. And what you see, of course, is kind of a diminishing return. And then what we do, of course, for the community score is we simply take the average of that and we go through it. Now, something that many of you may have noticed was that Command and Conquer was actually missing from this. That's right, we're ranking 1 through 13. There are 14 sets of Flesh and Blood. How does that work? Well, remember, Command and Conquer came out of Dynasty. And I removed it from this list because, from my perspective, Command and Conquer is not a fable. It is a Fable Rarity special treatment, right? The card itself exists coming out of Arcane Rising. Everyone's very, very, very aware of that at Majestic Rarity. Still, very clearly one of the most desirable cards in Flesh and Blood. If you were to put it on this list, it would certainly be up in the zeros. It would certainly, almost certainly, for sure, be number 0 on this list. But again, I don't classify this as a Fable because it is not a Fable Rarity card. It has a special treatment that appears at Fable Rarity within Dynasty set. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and kick off this list. Coming in at a community score of 8 is Corsham. So Corsham, the crossroad of the elements. This was our 13th place Fable. And I don't think that's too much of a surprise that it ranked at near the bottom. It's kind of hard when you first time read this, you're like, what the heck does this card even do? And, functionally, there's been some cute things with it, or there were some cute ideas with it, but then there were some clarifications made, and this is like in the Wayback Machine, to make sure that it wasn't busted. Card just really hasn't seen very much, I'm not going to say none, but it certainly has not seen very much play over the many years since the release of Tales of Aria. And at 12th place, coming in with a community score of 9, is Mistcloak Golly, the transcendable, flippable, chi-backed one. It's a gorgeous card, but it is out of Part the Mistveil. Now, I do want to point out that we actually have a 3-way tie in terms of community score between 10, 11, and 12, but you gotta put a rank on them, and they are all tied, so we went in alphabetical order. There's actually one above where they are tied as well, just went in alphabetical order. So just keep in mind that 12, 11, and 10 are all tied for that. So Mistcloak Golly, again, not in a ton of decks, right? We haven't really seen it make its way into competitive play really at all. It's kind of cute, but it's kind of just better to get that chi when you need it. Next up, we have the Deathmatch Arena coming in again at a community score of 9. Now, there's a fun story behind this one. Deathmatch Arena was actually very clearly ranked the worst for until about, I think it was number 53. That we were ranked. This was ranked with like 7 and change points on average, meaning it was very consistently being ranked as the worst. However, on Respondent 53 or 54, Deathmatch Arena went from 7 to 9, right? So if you do the quick math and averaging, that means that somebody came in and ranked Deathmatch Arena as number 1. Now, the reason that most people put this at the bottom is because it's very clearly UPF only, which in any other format makes it very unplayable. So this was very consistently rated by the community as being one of the lower ones. But someone who's very clearly a UPF fan put it at number 1, which from their perspective, as a UPF fan, I guess that makes sense, right? I guess that makes sense. So it did come in at, the 9-10, at the 9 spot, or at the 10 spot, sorry, tied for the 10 spot, because that's how math works. And hey, community survey. All right, next up in 10 is Blood of the Drakai. So this one is, it actually has some like real potential to it, right? So when you pitch this, the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn cost 1 less. That's very interesting. The problem being that means you're playing 4 cards in order to take real advantage of it, right? And that they're not zeros. And this just never really found a true home. It was, it was pretty cheap right out of the gate. It was also, I believe that was the beginning of it was the beginning of the Fab 2.0, where you had it in rainbow foil and cold foil within the same set release. And the rainbow foil got pretty cheap pretty quick. So this one has not seen a ton of play, and makes sense why folks rated it at the bottom. Now, next up, we have Master Cog. So this is a fun one. I actually opened this we were doing a Armory tournament for Crack Shuffle Play. I opened it in Crack Shuffle Play. How cool is that, right? So anyway, put it in Crack Shuffle Play. That's irrelevant. This just hasn't seen a ton of play. Actually, fun fact, shout out to Alex Hamilton. I played them in the last Armory tournament we had at Gungai. They were playing -IO and definitely put something in with the Master Cog. So shout out to them. That was pretty cool. I'd never seen it played before. And I think that speaks to why it's number 9 on the list, right? It's usable. It's absolutely usable. Doesn't see a ton of stuff. You kind of just want to be able to go in those decks. But hey, get you an extra crank. Get you your boom grenade coming in for a little extra something. That's pretty cool. They're not coming in for something, but getting an extra one. So that's pretty cool. All right, next up is Grandeur of Valhai, also one that I opened. I've opened 3 of them, and this was the first legendary I ever opened out of a random Everfest pack or prize packs. And this seems, came out in the Valda days out of Everfest. I played this one. I tried to make it work in the deck, but with the Guardians, it's really good on paper, but with the Guardians, when sometimes you're going longer, you really can't afford to not have the no block in your deck, right? So this one is definitely playable. That's why it's in the middle of the pack. It still hasn't seen a ton of play, and certainly not at the competitive level. Now, next we have Plague Hive coming in with a community score of 18, and I do want to point out the last one had 14. I forgot to mention that, but Plague Hive has 18. Now, this one has actually seen appearances in tournament winning decks, right? ProQuest level type decks. We've seen lists with that occasionally. Uzuri decks. Yeah, even Azalea decks for sure. I've seen Azalea decks play it. Not often, but they have. And this one's pretty cool. This card, if you could choose instead of randomly doing it, this card would be way, 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 way higher. Like way higher. That said, still pretty cool. All 3 of those tokens, pretty good. So community score of 18 there, coming in at number 7. Number 6, I was surprised this one was this low. Arknight Shard out of Crucible of War. So I imagine the reason it was so low is because it is a Viscerai spec. But this is pretty cool. When you pitch it, create a Runechant token, right? A lot of the Viscerai decks, like the Turtle Burst type build, there have been many different iterations of that over the years. And the vast majority of them play this because why would you not, right? You're trying to go long game. You can pitch. I mean, that's what it's there for. And then you make the Runechant token. That's pretty cool. Now, again, I imagine the reason it's number 6 is because it is Viscerai. Viscerai is not necessarily, although with the new set, Viscerai stock is way higher, right? But historically, Viscerai hasn't always been at the top of the pack, at least in Classic Constructed. So I imagine that's why it was ranked where it was. But there's also some pretty good ones right above it, such as Light of Soul. This one, if in my ranking, I had Arknight Shard above this one. But again, the community spoke, and at a score of 24, which is 6 higher than Plague Hive, we have Light of Soul. When it's pitched, reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's yellow, you may put it into your hero's soul. So it is a soul generator, and this pitches, it's yellow. So it in itself is a yellow, if you need to, from like a charge standpoint. Okay, pretty cool. Now, the no block there, I don't know how relevant that is if you're going in-game or something like that. Could be relevant, supposedly, for like a Boltyn, perhaps, but you know, seems pretty good to be able to get that extra soul. And maybe if it's a Herald or something like that, you never know, right? You never know. So coming in a community score of 24 at 5th place. We then move on to the Great Library of Solana, coming out of Monarch. This was the very first non-gem. This was the very first landmark we saw. And this was a chase card at the time, right? People were very into this. And I think, you know, it certainly does its thing. It's really hard to, if they can get it out, it's really hard to get rid of. Great Library of Solana. Yep. I mean, a community score of 26. In 3rd place was the inspiration for this question is Will of Arcana. All right. So you're counting, you know what's left. This card seems really good. Like Wizards like blue. I mean, you know, I guess like, let's just go off Kano, right? That seems pretty good. You just pitch the Kano and you get an amp off of it. That seems pretty darn useful and pretty darn good. So coming in at a score of 30, which means that it just shy, right? Remember the way that it's divided up for the average. 3rd place would be expected to be 33, which means that the vast majority of people had this in their top, three. Yeah, the vast majority of people had this within their top 5, 4 to 5, right? To be able to get a score like that, which is pretty impressive. Next up is Heart of Findall with a community score of 55, right? So Heart of Findall very consistently in the top 2, right? To be able to get a score like that, right? Because that is above, remember, 2nd place is a score of 50. So this is very consistently ranked 2nd or higher, right? Probably some 3s in there, but across the main field, very consistently in people's top 2. Okay, this card speaks for itself. Long game, this does all sorts of stuff. If you have less health than your opponent, gain health. It's pretty good when you're pitching blue off of it. And again, this is the OG, the very first one. It's worth a pretty penny if you've got the cold foil version of this. So, cheers. And then last, of course, is Eye of Ophidia. I think this one makes a lot of sense. When you pitch it up too, man, Blaze was running the snot out of this last season. That's been very useful over the years, continues to be very useful. With a community score of 71, very consistently in people's number 1 in order to be able to do that from just a pure math standpoint. So again, there you have your winner, the Eye of Ophidia, as the most useful. But I do want to go back to, again, the inspiration, Will of Arcana. I think this one's pretty good, and I think this one actually stands to potentially pick up stock over time. But I don't know. Can it edge out the Heart of Findall? So anyway, that will do it today. Again, I want to really thank everyone for participating in this. I thought it was really fun to see how my list compared to that of the community at large. I also kind of enjoyed the deathmatch arena thing because I was like, it's very clear what happened there. But again, that's small sample size at 73. It can do stuff like that. So anyway, thank you very much for participating. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, let me know in the comments. If nothing else, my friends, go Commando.